Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Show with your host, Jeff Lopes, where we bring you the world's top athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, influencers, and their journeys to success.
Welcome to episode 185 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dr. Kien Vuu. We talk biohacking, diets, stress relief, everything to do about health, family, friends, fitness. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited. Maybe the second time we have a guest with their little one on their lap. I love it. As a dad, this is it kind of makes this interview a little bit more special. Dr. Kien Vuu, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having Kaya as well. I've got Kaya. I've got a 9-year-old, Kira. Kira, you want to stop by and say hello? Come by.
Don't be shy. There you go.
She's my bonus daughter, actually.
I love it.
They are the joys of my life. We're here traveling in Vegas, but since you record only Tuesdays and Thursdays, Jeff, we had to make the appearance. Come on, Kira. All of Canada is going to see you.
All of Canada, no pressure.
All of Canada. She's stepping in. Just say hi. Just give a quick wave. There's Kira. Hi.
There you go.
Jeff, thanks for having us.
It's going to be a fun conversation. You have such an interesting story. You have that American dream story, coming to America, obviously with refugee parents and getting the education and getting the higher life, but then you struggled with it. So there's a lot of people that from different levels will really comply and really, really take to heart your story and really almost see themselves in your story. So let's just glimpse of that, and then we're going to talk about whatever. Let's just have a fun conversation today. But give me an understanding of your story, when the journey started and how it all processed.
Well, the journey is still going, and I'm still enjoying it.
It's always going to go. Always going to go.
But certainly, I was born shortly after the Vietnam War in 1978. And right around that time, you would recall that America pulled out of Vietnam in 1975. Yeah. There was a new communist regime that took over the government in South Vietnam, which is where I was born. And they basically seized all the businesses. They took over, all the new currency. And so if you had anything, it belonged to this new government. And my parents knew at the time there wouldn't really be a future for me there. And so they tried to escape. In fact, the first time they tried to escape, it was actually by night in a small little boat, and they were caught. And my dad got thrown into re-education camp. And when my father was in jail, my mother, who was pregnant with me, was forced to entertain the troops because she was a pharmacist, but she also sang. She was forced to entertain the troops by singing to them. When I was finally born, my dad was still in re-education camp or jail. But there was this program that allowed them to just, remove all the Chinese immigrants that were in Vietnam. And, we were Chinese by blood. My grandparents actually immigrated from China to Vietnam. And we boarded this refugee ship with over 2,000 refugees, and we sailed off. We ended up in the Philippines. And we were actually on that boat for 8 months because there was no room in the refugee camp. So I was, I should show you pictures. I'll send you pictures of actually us being on the boat, being packed like sardines. People fell off the boat and they died there. People had dysentery. They died of that. And I nearly died of dysentery on that boat. In fact, I was the only infant that actually survived on that boat. We spent another 3 months in a Philippine refugee camp. And, we were fortunately sponsored to America by a Catholic church. And so as an early Christmas present in 1979, I was in America growing up in Los Angeles. And one would think, a kid who made it through all of that would grow up feeling so grateful to be in America. And I can't say that was it. I grew up and I was watching a lot of TV, and I just kept thinking that I was very different from the kids that I saw on television. There were people that spoke perfect English. There were people with dads that threw footballs, with them. There were people that lived in these white picket fences houses, and I didn't have any of that. And I recall being, bused to a more affluent area for school, and I was constantly being teased for the stinky food my mom sent me to school with, for the hand-me-down clothes that I was always wearing. People would ask, "Oh, where'd you get your shoes?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got it at the Pick and Save, which is one of these like 99-cent store things." I remember being teased about that, and I just remember growing up, I didn't like who I was, and really that was the seed I believe of so many people's future illness, but mine for sure. There was a lot of stories of I'm not enough or I'm not worthy. And I took that into my future. As a kid, I wanted to be somebody like a Mick Jagger or Tony Robbins. Like I wanted to be in the media. Unfortunately, there was no Asian people in the media I could look up to. And my mom said, "You know what? We didn't sacrifice our lives to come to America for you to be an entertainer. So I'm going to give you three choices. You could be a doctor, an MD, or a physician." And so I went to medical school. But I always carried this, I need something outside of myself. I need to prove to myself and other people that I'm worthy. And it was a life of chasing success. I went to medical school. I got into a very competitive residency. I trained at the NIH. I trained at UCLA. I got a Howard Hughes Medical Institute award. I'm not saying that to impress people. I'm saying that because
it's pretty impressive, though.
I'm chasing all these accolades, and I find myself being a poster child for a Dalai Lama quote.
What is it?
He was asked by a reporter what he found most interesting about humanity, and he said, "Man," because he would sacrifice his health in order to make money, and then sacrifice his money to recuperate his health.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote, because that's something I always say. I mean, your wealth is your health, right? I mean, if you don't have your health, you don't have nothing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's not the story that resonated within me, but now so many of my clients come to me, they face the same thing.
It's ongoing.
Yeah, we potentially have these wounds that we grow up with, and there's a narrative that we listen to the Matrix, or we listen to these messages that come in from the outside. Oh, that career is not right for you. You shouldn't follow that part of your dream, or that thing that lights you up. You are not worthy. You are not enough. And there's all these messages that we pick up that some people might actually start believing in those things. And the thing is, if you're not good with yourself and you start chasing, that energy of chasing something that you're not actually causes your body to go into distress mode. You have increased cortisol that goes in, and this is a biological and physiological thing that happens.
Yeah.
Inflammation goes up, your immune system goes down, and guess what? You're living a stressed life, and then you have a stressed out lifestyle. So me as a medical doctor, trained at some of the most reputable institutions all around the world, 5 years into my training, or not 5 years into me being an attending, I've achieved quote unquote success. However, I was overweight, I was diabetic, I had high blood pressure, and I was on prescription medications. So I end up, having early stage disease of the people that ended up in my operating room.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so that was the true wake up call from what I've, started to shift my life. And being.
But was there a moment or something inspired? Like what clicked? There's always a moment, whether you stop smoke. There's always a moment where it's just like, boom, this happened. Where it's like that light. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was a series of moments that I thought, what the hell is happening to me in my life? There was a year where I had discovered I was overweight and diabetic. I would look at myself in the mirror every single day and say, "You are a freaking phony. You are not the epitome of health." I had that going for me. Yeah. I had a close uncle who passed away very, very early. I mean, he was only 50 years old of lung cancer. I had a woman in my life that I thought I was going to marry at the time leave me for another man because I was so gung-ho on building this practice. And so all these things I felt were happening to me, not knowing that all those things were actually happening for me. And I would recall walking on rounds in the hospital one day, and I pick up the chart to go see this patient of mine. I remember his name was Ishmael, 43-year-old pancreatic cancer, probably only has a couple months to live. And I remember, I'm supposed to drain 10 liters of fluid from his belly. When you have cancer, sometimes what happens is those cancer cells plug up, your lymphatic systems, and you've got this huge belly of fluid. And so tap 10 liters of fluid from this guy. I was thinking, this guy is going to be really sick, and I'm going to walk into this room from some guy who's really destitute. I better put myself together. I know I'm a wreck right now, but I better put myself together. Anyway, I walk in the door, open the door to Ishmael's room. And there he is. Hey, Doc, how are you, man? I am so glad you're here. I can't wait for you to take out this fluid because I'm going to feel so much better. Doc, I'm ready for this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, Jesus.
Perspective.
This guy's about to die, and he has just got the most beautiful energy. And so I couldn't stop, I couldn't help myself but asking, Ishmael, how are you so positive right now at this time? And he said, Doc, it's easy. And he said something like, it didn't always used to be this way. I used to always be stressed out, in my life as well. But I realized one thing, no matter what is happening in the outside world, I could always choose how I show up. All right. And now I make the choice to show up with love, with positivity. And man, his energy was infectious, with all the nurses, everybody in that hospital. But he really gave me that wake up call, that my reality at that time was probably a reflection of how I was living my life, of saying no to my own dreams, of building this thing and chasing this thing that's not mine. So, when I met him and he really just reminded me that we have the power of choice, that in any moment of time, we can choose how we show up. No matter what the circumstances are, we can show up.
Yeah.
Really, it was that big pause that now I'm like, all right, how do I want to show up in my life? It's
all the perspective, right? I mean, you could go through it all day, but it's perspective of how you view everything and how you've used it. I'm just listening to your conversation and how you reframed certain words. It's how you reframe. How do you talk to yourself? How do you show up? How present are you at the moment? And how you focus on, and I talk about this all the time too, is how you focus on what you can control.
Yeah.
Let the universe control what you can't control and just focus on what you can control. Because a lot of times we're constantly battling to control and fix things that we have no control over. And us not having the control over that just adds the stress, adds anxiety, adds that pressure to us. Because we feel like, I find it, I might be totally wrong, but I find it more in males because we have that protector, the provider mindset. And if it's not going right, we have to somehow fix it.
Absolutely. I mean, that builds toxic masculinity.
100%.
I feel like so many men, including myself, get into this role of, I need to quote unquote succeed. And a lot of it means, I need to make money. I need to make lots of money to be worthy, to be successful so that I can provide. And that could leave somebody feeling, like they are not worthy within themselves already. And there's a very beautiful story of, we all just saw my 17-month-old daughter, Kaya. And when we were, when she was born, we actually had a little, blip in the hospital. We were scheduled for induction. And when my fiance was getting induced, they've noticed that the baby's heart, just stopped beating. They rush over the ultrasound. They put the ultrasound on her. And I'm looking at it. I'm a radiologist as well. So I could see the images and I could see her heart just slow down when a baby's heart should be doing this.
Yeah.
And, they rush her to C-section. She comes out and her oxygen saturation keeps dropping and she's turning blue and I'm holding onto her hand. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening here? And she finally makes it to the ICU. And she's there for, several hours. I go and I visit her for the next day and she's got a tube down her throat, a tube down her mouth. Her toes are being pricked a lot because they were getting a lot of labs on her. And I was so afraid that, with the loss of oxygen that she had, she might have some kind of health issue. And I remember just thinking about that, perseverating about that. And then when I finally held her in my arms, I just looked at her and I was like, oh my God. It doesn't matter, even if she had a health complication, she was so perfect in my eyes. She is so worthy to me. And yes, she is loved. And no matter what happens, whether she turns out to have, some mental thing or some other health complication, she is worthy. And I love her so much. And that was a huge moment of healing because not only was I reminded that life is so precious, but it healed those parts of me that thought I was not worthy because I was not X, Y, or Z. When I saw her there, I said, oh my God, we are perfect. And every human being is perfect just like that. We all go through our own struggles, but our struggles are really the sandpaper for our awakening. But anyway, I digress. I don't know.
I mean, you're obviously hitting home. Mine's was a little more, we'll talk about it one day. Mine's was a little more complicated. My son was, have you heard of the diagnosis high drops before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my son was born with high drops. My wife got a virus during pregnancy, 31 weeks, emergency C-section. He was pronounced dead at birth. Revived him. Spent the next 4 months in ICU. Had seven, I could say seven, but 6 organs severely damaged. Left ventricle was hard. Smallest baby at Sick Kids Hospital. We're very lucky. We have one of the greatest pediatric hospitals in the world in Toronto. And he was one of the smallest baby in history. I don't know if it's changed that at under 2.5 pounds to be on dialysis for 3 days before he started finally urinating, which was a miracle because we went in that day to shut down everything because he was on his 3rd day on dialysis and he was poisoning his body. We went through hell and back. He's been through hell and back. Because of the lack of oxygen, part of his brain was severely damaged. His brain had to reroute itself. I know everything about him. I became almost a doctor for my son. I've studied. So I know everything about him. I know everything. And when he was discharged from the hospital, he was diagnosed with CP. And we were told he would most likely be confined to a wheelchair. And I went on a mission. And I spent the last 14 years, but 12 years severely going through every therapy, every life therapy, every touch, everything possible. Mm-hmm. And I put fitness from literally 6 months old, from flexibility. We went from 0 and we went from possible wheelchair to AFOs. He was supposed to be wearing braces till he was probably 19, 20. By 12th birthday, out of braces. Before his 13th birthday, the day before, we ran our first marathon together. And this kid is a fitness fanatic, incredible little baseball player. But I rerouted everything because we started from a very young age. And a lot of parents would have just taken the doctor's diagnosis and sat back with it. And I did everything to the extreme opposite. I brought every therapy. I took him everywhere I possibly can to change his outcome. And I did everything I possibly can to change his outcome. And it has changed his outcome. He's just this loving, sweet. But going back to, you said, my son, when he was playing baseball, he was 3rd fastest on the team, but he runs differently because the way his legs drag. Yeah. So, but I don't see any of that. I look at him as this sweet angel that smiles, that hugs me. He's a 14-year-old boy, and he comes and tells me every morning and every night that he loves me, hugs me, gives me a kiss tonight. And he melts my heart. He's the sweetest angel in the world. So as a parent, the love overcomes all that shit. Yeah. And it's our duty as parents to really, especially the development ages up to 14, 15, 16, really, really hone and grow and do everything we possibly can, because you can't just leave it up to the medical world to kind of guide them. And whether they have a normal childbirth, and you still, even my daughter, high school, honor roll, high performance dancer, we did everything from day one to get her to this stage. And I think it's a lot of parents, they're not present enough. They're not focused enough, and they don't give it. Our kids just want love. Their kids don't give a shit about toys. They want it. When they're happy, when they get a toy and they're happy they got a toy, it's not because they're getting that toy. It's because they feel like they're being recognized for something, and their dad and mom are showing appreciation for them. That's what makes it special. They don't give a shit if that toy is gone in a day or two. It's that memory of what that memory brought. So I'm all about building memories, taking photos, building photo albums, going on road trips, do road trips every year. We love sitting in the car for 12 hours and screaming, shouting, and being all pissed off, because those are the best memories you build, right? So I'm all about that. So when you said that, I apologize for breaking to your story, but it hit close to home with my son Tiago.
Oh my God! I mean, for those people that don't know what CP is, it's cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful story. And one of the things, or two things I picked up from what you said was, one, presence, and how we cultivate that. Because I feel like so many of the people that I treat right now are so much in autopilot, are so much in living in this matrix. Yeah. Being distracted with their phones, with their work, with all those things that we forget about just being right here, right now, with the people that we love. that also allows people to make really bad choices. Like, oh man, I got to grab the first thing I see and put it in my mouth. Nobody is present. Nobody is conscious. And the fact that you've cultivated that I know what I'm going to talk to you about when you jump on my podcast, brother. That was beautiful. The other thing that you said that was really remarkable was you did not accept the diagnosis you got from the hospital.
Yeah.
I find that so powerful. And as a medical doctor trained, I've got an MD. I'm not some woo-woo guy, trained at UCLA, National Institutes of Health, Howard Hughes Medical Institute. I can say that sometimes the diagnosis that you get isn't, it shouldn't be a sentence. Some people say, oh man, I have depression. I have anxiety. Or I am depressed. I am this. I have high blood pressure. I am a diabetic. Well, I just want to say that, usually those outcomes happen when you live a life a certain way and you get that outcome. If you start to break free and change from that, you can start to maybe expect a different outcome.
Yeah.
I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure. I had, I was on prescription meds. And I realized I wasn't given the tools in medical school to actually be healthy. And when I started to realign my life in that way, I was able to reverse all those conditions. And the fact that you did not accept the diagnosis that, your son was going to be, was going to live life a certain way. You said, no, that's not going to go down that way.
Yeah.
And you seriously course corrected, his evolution and where he is now. So, I want people to just recognize that if you happen to be diagnosed with anything, don't necessarily take that as, a sentence, that you can control the outcome of your health. You can control the outcome of how you show up in this world. Again, bring me back to that Ishmael story.
Yeah. And enjoying the process, right? I mean, there was moments, and maybe because I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years and maybe that I've always had that mindset where I can't give up on something. When I put something in my head, I got to get it done. And there was times, for example, little things. My son hopping on one foot. It took 3 months. 3 months where we did it every day for over an hour just to get him to hop on one foot. And now on one foot, he's flying upstairs on one foot and doing stuff. So it's that process. Enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Because those micro victories are so special.
Oh my God.
So special.
I was going to ask you, if you had maybe, a diagnosis or something like that, do you think you would have responded with how you elevate, did you approach life like this all around or, was it because of your son that you were allowed to kind of like take the extra steps of being more present and more focused, because I realize with some clients, you really need to identify their why. They would do more for other people than they would themselves. So I wonder, do you approach life that way as well? Or do you?
No. Yeah, I do. Because I'm a strong believer. I do the whole Oprah mindset of fill your cup up first.
Yeah.
I mentally, spiritually, physically, I take care of myself before I take care of anybody else.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about spiritually, to me, is more the whole, whether it's meditation, reading a book, taking daily vacations, whatever you want to call it. But it's I make sure I'm at my physical. I take care of myself physically. I make sure I try to get, my biggest struggle is sleep. I try to get as much sleep as I possibly can, but I'm a strong believer. You have to be at your physical peak to be able to serve others.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a strong point, but I've always been the type where just, I love challenge. I love breaking the mold. I love challenge. I love looking at something and being like, there's a way to get this change the outcome. Because we are all, and that nurse that day during a diagnosis was a doctor, discharged doctor, a nurse. We're standing there, and she made a comment. And I'm going to give you two examples about the hospital. But she made a comment. I was actually talking to somebody about this yesterday, Doc. She made a comment. She said, and I don't know what her mind was, but I was already aggravated with the diagnosis. I go, he's 4 months old. How are you going to diagnose his future? How are you going to put a label on him?
Yeah.
And I said to him, you're putting a label on him that could, if he ever wants to join the military, you're putting a label that could stop a lot of his future, getting a license, but you're trying to stop a lot of future before you understand what the future is ahead. And then she turned around, she goes, a lot of parents ask for a diagnosis because now medically they could be supported by the government with a check.
Mm-hmm.
And that just infuriated me. I'm like, you're talking as a parent that I'm gonna say yes to accepting this because I'm gonna get paid for it. So that was my mindset that really aggravated me that day. And there's one more thing is my son was in the ICU on the 4th floor, 6 beds. Those beds rotated. Those children that came in that room, it was a rotation, constantly rotating. When I mean rotating, a lot of them were passing away. This is the highest and most intense ICU. It's got 6 beds, and it was just the most intense would go in there. Most wouldn't make it out. And me and my wife would be there from 7 days a week. We dropped my daughter at daycare. We'd be there from 7 in the morning till 6, 7 at night. When I would leave the nurse at night, I would be on call, anything, whether it's blood work, they would have to call me for my approval first. I was like so involved. And I remember one day I was sitting there, and me and my wife and I said this, I called her name was Marianne. I call Marianne the nurse. She was always there. And I said, Marianne, I go, is there a reason why no other parents are here? It was very rarely any parents you see. And I'm like, do they come in after a night? Do they come in like when are they here? And she says, Jeff, she goes, that's the reason your son's going to make it home. He goes, you guys are present. He knows you're present. A lot of these parents don't come here because they don't want to build an attachment. They don't want to build a connection to their children because they know they're going to lose them. Mm-hmm. When I heard that, I was just like, are you kidding me? But it's the reality. A lot of people, they can't, as a parent, they don't understand that I'd rather spend a month of bonding than no month. They don't want to build that connection. That was something that I've always had in the back of my head. And I've talked about it quite a few times is you have to be present. You don't, that all those little moments make such a difference in our children's development. Doesn't matter what age to what area they are at.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for reminding me of that. You know, that's one of the things that I constantly have to get myself, like, you know, throughout the day, ask myself, am I present or am I on autopilot?
Yeah.
You know, and there's so much we can do. I mean, we can drive from point A to point B and not be here at all, you know? And so can we remind ourselves to connect with that part? Because that's the part that's truly living life. Otherwise, you're just living probably Groundhog's Day if you're on autopilot. You know? Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with hacking into your schedule and understanding your schedule.
Yeah.
So when my schedule is so ultra focused, where I'm going to dedicate an hour to a podcast, I'm dedicated to you. If I'm going to dedicate an hour to work, I'm dedicated an hour to work. But when it comes time to my kids, they're actually in my schedule. I have times locked in for my kids. So when I'm in there, it's present time now. So understanding and really studying and understanding your schedule is so valuable for somebody that's got a crazy busy lifestyle like yourself or myself, right?
Are you ready to unlock your full potential? I want to introduce you to the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, a powerful resource to transform your life today. With expert interviews, practical tips, and inspiring stories, this podcast is your roadmap to lasting wellness. Here's what a listener has to say.
I used to struggle with my health, but this podcast changed everything. It's like having a personal trainer, nutritionist, and life coach totally for free.
With over 2,000 5-star reviews, we're a podcast you can trust. The Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast, available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely. I tell people that, you know, some people are like, oh my God, your schedule is so packed and it's so rigid. You know, how do you have any freedom? And I tell them it's because of the schedule.
Yeah.
That I have all this freedom, because I know all these things have dedicated time that I can fully focus on them, that when I'm at each block that I'm in, I can be fully there and I fully get to enjoy. If it's not there and I start giving things up, you know, and not follow my schedule to a routine, I find myself very disheveled. And so that's really important. And I know Tony Robbins has a quote, I forgot what it was, but it went something like, you know, if you could dream it, it's possible. Or something like, if you could think it is possible, if you could dream it, it could potentially be done. But when you schedule it, it is real.
Yeah.
And so the power of actually putting something to your schedule and sticking to your schedule is the most liberating thing. And you'll find also that, you know, health, wealth, your relationships, all these things flourish, because that's the thing you say, no, I'm going to put intentional energy in this block right here. I'm going to put intentional energy to connect with Jeff today. I'm going to put intentional energy for this date night I have with my fiance. So it's a powerful thing, putting things into your calendar.
And I love that too. It's one thing I even add to that is the accountability. When I want to do something, whether it's a new business, whether like I have a bunch of companies and stuff, when I'm about to do something new or take care of myself, or I have a fitness goal, I tell as many people as I possibly can. I put myself accountable. I make sure I have no way I could fail, because now I'm going to be a loser if I fail, and because I held myself accountable to all these other people. So one thing I do is, like I said, accountability, or having an accountability partner, or having somebody that you could have that confinement where then you know they're going to give you that extra phone call, is so important. And it doesn't have to be a group. It could be, me and you hook up and we could become really good friends, and now we're going to hold each other accountable for staying fit all the time as fit dads or whatever it is. But having a partner to be accountable for is so valuable.
Yeah, no, and I would love that. I after this podcast, I hope we stay friends, because I feel like I've got a lot to learn from you. From the way you talk about your children, I know the type of father you are, and I want to learn some of that. And the fact that they came out so awesome too. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have a lot to learn in that respect as well. So,
and I'm constantly learning, buddy. I always say the day you die is the day you stop learning.
Yeah.
It's just there's, you always learn. And then, it's crazy is I'll learn from somebody younger from me. I'll learn from somebody older. You just be open-minded to always learning.
Yeah.
Because and you don't have to agree with everything people say. I mean, you could take a little from here, a little from there, and just kind of make your own little meal, your own little recipe, right? To success kind of thing, right? Let's talk about America. Let's talk about health and changing topic. America, health. North America in general has health as a big issue. When I'm talking about obesity, diabetes, there's so many different factors. But every time I travel to the US, when you go to Texas or anywhere else, I go across the border to Buffalo, and you go walk into a mall, and it feels like obesity is just a common thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how is that going to change? Is that going to change?
It will change. We need to bring some consciousness into people. We need people to get out of the matrix that they were programmed to live and start making conscious choices, because our health, our relationship, success in business, whatever it is basically the end result of the conscious choices that we make. Or actually, they're the end result of the choices that we make. You get to decide if you're going to do it consciously or unconsciously, because here we go. The autopilot and the messages we get from living our modern day life is, we don't sleep. We'll sleep when we're dead, because we got to push out there. We're in so much stress. We get a lot of marketing from big food companies and things like that on Whoppers and burgers and all these unhealthy foods. There's sugar in everything we eat, and so just in the world alone, we saw life expectancy actually climb every single year. But in 2017, it actually dropped, meaning right around that time that you could expect that their kids might not outlive their parents during that time. Now, why is that the case? We've got 1 in 2 people in America, 1 in 4 people in America actually has a chronic disease. And let me get the stats right. 1 in 2 Americans has a chronic disease. And then 1 in 4 Americans have multiple chronic diseases. Me being one of them 5 years ago. High blood pressure, overweight, probably obese, maybe I have to check my BMI at the time, but I was a pretty chunky kid or adult. And then also diabetes. And those are metabolic health problems. And those problems, aren't just showing up because we've got some toxin that's making us sick, or that some virus, is coming in and all of a sudden people are sick. People are changing the way that they live. And it's how they live actually turns on the genes that make people sick. So there is genes that get turned on, genes that get turned off, and you could actually program your DNA by how you live your life. So how you show up in the world every day and how you live your life. And in my book, Thrive State, I talk about that in 7 key areas: sleep, nutrition, movement, your stress or emotional, mastery, or like your thought and your mindset, your relationships with people, and then finally are you living with a sense of purpose? All of these 7 major factors actually control the environment, the molecular environment of your cells. And if you live in such a way that says, hey, I'm really living my true life, you actually talk to your genes, and your genes will gift you with optimal health. If you're living in a stress state, and those 7 areas are off in your life, you are telling basically your cells that you are in danger, and your cells turn on the danger response. Cortisol goes up, inflammation goes up, your immune system goes down. And in that state, that's when you have suboptimal cells that lead to suboptimal tissues, that lead to suboptimal organs, that lead to suboptimal systems. And when you've got suboptimal systems in your body, that's when you've got symptoms. That's when you got chronic disease. And so the epidemic of chronic disease we have worldwide is not a disease of our genetics, but a disease of our consciousness and our subsequent choices. So if you stay in autopilot, you start to live a life that's stressed out, that's angry, that's not showing up, if you are resentful for the people that have hurt you, if you're putting junk in your diet, if you're not moving around every single day, you create an environment for yourselves that are in this stress state. But if you start to become a little bit more conscious and audit your life in each one of these 7 areas and say, how am I showing up in these 7 areas? And you pause, am I in autopilot and going after what I've learned to do for a long time? Or can I pause and say, no, I'm going to show up a little bit differently? That tactical pause is something that is so important. Viktor Frankl. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go. Finish that quote.
Yeah. Viktor Frankl had this quote. Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor who was a physician in Nazi internment camps. And he saw so much death in family and friends, but he still had this to say. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Yeah.
And in that space is our power to choose our response.
Yeah.
And in our response lies our growth and freedom. So we all have this space, no matter what's coming at us. Coronavirus, if we've got, somebody leaving us and we getting fired, that we could create this space, and still from that space, always choose how we show up. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's hopefully empowering to a lot of people that want to take their health back.
So how do we go about, let's okay, these are all great, but put ourselves in a low income area, growing up in a low income area where it's healthier. I wouldn't say healthier, sorry, I apologize. It's easier and cheaper to eat junk food than eat healthy.
Yeah.
Isn't that government? Doesn't government have to put mandates in place to change that? When it's easier to grab a couple of cheeseburgers than sit down with your family and eat a nutrition-filled vegetables and meat and healthy diet, how these are all great things we're saying, but it's that accessibility, it's the cost. There's so many factors that are changing. And then as a parent, from day one, we have been feeding our kids my kids they take omegas, they take probiotics, they take their vitamin D every day. They're taking vitamins. I have an understanding of health. I graduated college in the Finnish leadership program. So I understand it. And we've been instilling it from day one. My wife making healthy choices, teaching them healthy choices. They're allowed to eat junk food, but understanding the balance, understanding what and how their body's going to react to foods, teaching them, educating them, giving them good foods, filling them with good foods. I'm able to do that because of my understanding and my knowledge for myself.
Yeah.
When you get a child growing up in an environment where their parents are eating fast food every day, it's just a reflection of their environment. How do we change that?
That's a great question. And it has to come from multiple different sources. I mean, I'm at a county facility, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which is why today I'm so honored to be able to talk to you today. And it's a very indigent population. And unfortunately, like you said, a lot of the cheaper foods are more accessible to many people. And they're the ones that are showing up at the hospitals that are now using taxpayer dollars to go through the treatment, and they're just going to go through drugs. They will continue doing what they're doing. And then, more drugs being bought, more hospital time, and nobody getting well. So there's a couple of things. Number one, I do feel like there might be some lower cost things that people in food deserts and in indigent populations can do. There are people that basically, for example, some people, when the foods don't look really nice, some people just throw them out. But there are a lot of places now that are recycling, just foods that don't look right, but completely healthy. And so there's a lot of those things that kind of going on. And there's starting to be a little bit more access to the people with the poor. But it's not, necessarily an access to better food, but an access to a better consciousness and
education. Yeah.
And at least where I'm coming from, I feel like, how do we get into this place, in the first place? I mean, we have messages of the life that we should be living on social media and on TV shows and things like that. People are learning, we got to hustle, we got to not sleep. And oh my God, that burger is delicious. But people, today, a big theme is presence and consciousness and being able to choose. Because if you're not there, you're in autopilot. And where's autopilot? Autopilot is getting your consciousness hijacked by media, by culture. You're not really choosing. And so, at least for me, I think now I'm combining what I wanted to do as a child to what I know now. I mean, I always sort of wanted to do media and entertainment, but after recognizing where chronic disease truly comes from and having that journey of being able to get rid of chronic disease. And here's an awesome thing too. Not only are you reversing disease when you do that, you become a fitter, stronger, smarter, and better version of yourself when you do so. And you have more to give to the world. And, at least how I'm attacking it is that if we're losing people due to the media and entertainment that's out there, can we have media and entertainment that that could inspire, that will let people wake up to, okay, maybe those are the foods that we shouldn't be eating, and potentially, me doing shows that don't involve sponsors that feed a lot of money to give people the wrong type of messages. But it's a multifactorial question, from business to corporations to governments. I mean, it's approach.
You hit it on the nail, because you're dealing with two industries that are billion-dollar industries, that pharmaceutical, big pharma, they want you to be sick. And you're dealing with Kellogg's and all these brands. And I don't want to pick on one, but there's all these brands that are literally, you walk out to you're in your local grocery store and they make it as accessible when you're walking through those aisles, that what is on the front of the aisles, you go to your local Walmart, what's on checkout, it's all full of fast food, sugar-filled items. So they're making that accessibility so prevalent, because is that exactly what you said? It's that whole marketing mindset. And when you study marketing, you got to visually see something they say 6 to 7 times, it becomes subconsciously in your mind. So you see a commercial 6, 7 times, you're standing at that grocery store, or you're standing and you see that bag of chips right there on checkout. And that mindset of that person on that commercial smiling and being happy, you're going to grab that and put it in their car, right?
Like our celebrity heroes or some celebrity.
Exactly. So it feels like it almost feels like this we're on this hamster wheel, and it feels like almost it's going to be almost impossible to get out of, because it would need you, me, and millions doing the exact thing you're trying to do. But how are you going to duplicate that? That's the thing. How are you going to get into these small communities? How are you going to start educating people? How are you going to start educating teachers? How are you going to change the whole educational system, where in their gyms, in their health, in their nutrition class, they're talking about this to 7, 8, 9-year-olds, teaching from a very young age. Yeah. So there's so many layers that it feels like it's almost like, it sounds bad to say, almost impossible to change it right now.
It seems that way, but I'm a little bit more optimistic.
I want to be.
I recognize this. I recognize that as I start to evolve, as I start to become a higher vibrational version of myself, and I show up that way on social media, on podcasts, of the people I get to meet, people sense that. People go, oh my God, there's just this thing about you. How are you so happy? Just like when I met Ishmael, I just said, well, how are you this way? Yeah. And I think the more people start to wake up, the more people become conscious and recognize that living their life a particular way is just so much better. I feel like that energy will ripple. Before, when you only had certain TV stations which were the major media moguls, they controlled what was going on out there. And so they had a bigger grasp. Now everybody could potentially have a voice, and having a voice is so much easier. And I do feel that, I'm going to get all Star Warsy on us now, but I do feel that the force of good is stronger and is felt. That vibration will resonate with people so much better than the latter. Even if they don't necessarily agree, they're like, oh, there's something about this person that's just a little bit more authentic. I could turn down my limbic system because this feels safe.
Yeah.
So I'm very optimistic that that things will turn around, and that voices of good are going to resonate more than the voices that are trying to bring us down.
When you talk about biohacking, give me an explanation of biohacking.
Biohacking is really, I'm actually going to be speaking at the biohacking conference.
You are?
I'll be doing an IG live with Dave Asprey, quote unquote, the father of biohacking.
Yeah.
He's a Canadian, or actually lives up on the west side of Canada. And so really biohacking is just hacking your biology, doing certain things to hack your biology. Now, many people associate biohacking with technologies, like wearing an Oura ring to track your sleep, or using red light therapy to increase ATP and lower inflammation, or doing some hyperbaric chamber to increase oxygen delivery in your body. So there's all these technologies that are out there, and I do believe in all these technologies. And they promise to extend the human lifespan further than we ever thought possible. But here's the thing: when we actually study the world's longest lived populations, and I don't know if you're familiar with the book Blue Zones. There's
Ken
Voigtner that talked about these 5 places where people live the longest. It was Okinawa, Japan. We've got Sardinia in Italy, Loma Linda, California. We've got Icaria, Greece, and we also have what was the last one? Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And if we look at that place, none of these places. These are people where there's largest populations of centenarians anywhere on Earth. And we look at those places, they didn't have access to any of this technology.
No.
So what's this telling us? It's telling us that how we live our life actually activates the biology of longevity. And I can go deeper into that, but how we show
100%. 100%.
And that's how we hack. My book, Thrive State, that's what I talk about. In those 7 areas of your life, you audit your life, in those 7 areas, you can change your biology. You can hack yourself without the technology. But you know what? If you blend both, that's great. When I work with my clients, it's a combination of optimizing their hormones, using peptides and using supplements. But it's focused mainly on the foundation of how we show up in the world, how we live our life in those 7 areas.
There is God, I can't remember his name now. I'm trying to think as we were talking. There was a series on CNN, and as a storyteller, gentleman's a storyteller, incredible storyteller. And he visited, he called it, I think it was the 6 or 7 wonders of the world. And before tourism in the world changes them. And a few of them were the blue zones.
Yeah.
And it's a lifestyle, right? I mean, you go back to, my parents were from Portugal, and you have great grandparents that lived to 100 something, because there was no processed food. They lived off the farms. They didn't have stress. They woke up, they farmed, they enjoyed their life. The European mindset, they close everything in Portugal from 12 to 3 o'clock every day for everybody to go to the beach or go to the cafe, right? There's no stress on that. So their stress levels are lower. They're eating more, I would call it quote unquote, or real organic, not fake organic, because I think a lot of the organic stuff we buy are not pest controlled, but the soil is. So either way, you're still getting something in you, right? So these blue zones where they're slowly dissipating, they're slowly starting to change because of modern society coming in and tourism coming in, because everybody wants to see it, everybody wants to be part of it, and it's changing their whole environment and their whole outcome, because now they're becoming tourism. So now they're starting to import stuff and trying to kind of please the tourists, right? So yeah, it's just, it's hard with busy lifestyles to live that completely organic lifestyle, right? That lifestyle of just like stress-free and eating direct produce, right? Farm to table kind of thing. It's not that easy, right? So, but I've done research on those. So when you brought that up, I thought it's pretty amazing when you think of how the lifestyle has changed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned biohacking, and that's the major message I want to leave with people is biohacking doesn't have to be these expensive gadgets.
No,
it's how you live your life. There's two things. I put all of those gadgets and technologies in what I term the science of longevity, but then there's also the art of living, and you combine them both. That's when you really get the result that you want. And it's choices that we make. I mean, at the end of the day. Currently, I don't think I want to live in a blue zone per se, and that's a conscious choice. I'm like, you know what? I do enjoy.
They have beautiful beaches. They have beautiful beaches.
I wouldn't mind going there for a little bit, but there will be a time that I'm like, you know what? I think I've been a part of this technological world enough. Maybe I could start to settle without all these things.
It's hard. It's hard, buddy.
Making that choice consciously, though, is the key thing there.
When you're talking about biohacking, are there certain aspects of your biohacking when you talk about, for example, intermediate fasting and stuff like that? Do you imply that? Do you talk about stuff like that, like intermediate fasting? Because there's so many studies that show how intermediate fasting could, even not intermediate, even fasting in general, could change and alter your DNA.
Oh, absolutely.
So do you talk? I'm a strong believer in intermediate fasting. I do it Monday to Friday. I do it Monday to Friday. I don't do it on the weekends because I like enjoying, but I like also breaking that cycle. I like changing my body's cycle. So on Saturday and Sunday, I have breakfast with my kids.
All right. So, free coaching session for you, Jeff Lopes. No, intermittent fasting is great. And here's the thing. We think of intermittent fasting as this new thing that we're going to incorporate.
Yeah.
As a part of our lifestyle. It's actually not that. It's actually, we were born to fast. Every single living organism, unicellular all the way to multicellular, us, animals, things like that, we evolved and we are now surviving because we've been able to take times where we can live with energy and nutrient resources versus times that we don't. Yeah. So it's built into our DNA and our system to be able to do that. And then when we fast, we actually turn on these genes that activate healing and rejuvenation. We turn on a process called autophagy, which actually eats out all this junk debris in our cells and renews them. So it's a part of the rejuvenative process to include fasting. So back in our ancestor days, there were days that we would eat when there was food around, and days that we didn't eat when there's no food around. And we evolved to have that. Unfortunately, with modern day lifestyle, with refrigeration, now food lasts forever. You can get food anytime you want. We're actually going against what we were, created, the life we were created to have, which were times of feast and times of not. And when you do that, we don't go through that rejuvenatory process that we have. And unfortunately, when you end up eating all the time, and then also eating the wrong foods, that's really, setting yourself up for insulin resistance, for diabetes, for high blood pressure, and for obesity. So I am a fan of intermittent fasting. And I think what you're doing is perfect. Some people are so religious, on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I got to do this and that. It's like, do what works. Just remember what our ancestors did. There were times that they ate, these times that they didn't. If they weren't hungry, they didn't really eat. So, you could do that if you want, but you don't have to be so religious about it. And I love the fact that you're like Monday through Friday, I do this, and on weekends, I do some social hours, so I include a little bit more meals. And I think that works for people.
Tell me if I'm incorrect with saying this as a doc. When your body, what I was told, this is years ago when I was taught about fasting, your body has two working things that could happen, quote, at the same time, at different times. Either your body's healing or your body's digesting. So for the listeners, when you're eating, your body's digesting is not healing. And how they broke that down to me, and tell me if this is right or wrong. They said, when you're sick, do you feel like eating? And I said, no, that's because your body's trying to recover. So it's forcing you not to be hungry to recover. Is that true? Does that make sense?
It's sort of true. It's probably a little oversimplified, but
Okay.
absolutely different processes that occur in your body require a certain amount of energy expenditure, right? So if you're dealing with an infection, all your ATP, your immune cells going to be up, all that's going to be used focused on one thing. And if you don't give yourself a little bit of rest every now and then, you're not going to be able to renew. If your body's constantly, if you're giving your body all these different stresses, and eating and digesting is actually a stress.
Yeah.
If you're doing that all the time, you're not giving your body enough resources to rejuvenate and to heal, because we do have a finite amount of energy resources we're always giving around. And if you're constantly stressing your body without allowing your body to rejuvenate, that's when their problems exist.
Yeah. So stress relief. Give me some hacks for stress relief for people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so much, I think, is, again, there's the autopilot mode, and it's really real. There's a part of our brain called the default mode network.
Yeah.
Default mode network is basically the part of our brain that's active when we're not doing something, at task. When we're not in flow, we're not conscious, we're actually in this autopilot default mode network. It picks up a bunch of stuff, a lot of traumas we had when we were kids, a lot of that defines the ego. And when that thing is active, it's usually thinking about what can go wrong. And it's a big part of the stress that happens in our life. And so if we can quiet down that mode and we become a little bit more present, that's key. That's another way of saying is, can we actually see the stress that's happening? And so many people are in it and they sort of know that they're in it, but they're not able to step back and go, oh my God, I'm kind of stressed. So there's different things that we could certainly do. One, recognizing that stress is happening is key, and having that presence and being able to, from a 30,000 foot views, say, oh my God, I'm stressing right now. And how do we do this is building a muscle of just being able to take a step back and have that 30,000 foot view. Because if you're in it, you're like, oh my God, I'm stressed. All these things are building. So one of the things I tell people is the 5 by 5 to thrive, which is, 5 times a day for about 5 minutes. Just really focus on your breath. You can do some box breathing, like where you breathe for 4 or 5 seconds in, hold it, breathe out for 4 to 5 seconds, hold it, and then breathe out for 4 to 5 seconds. And any type of breathing, there's a different type of breathing patterns that do different things, and that could be a whole different talk there. But what we'll notice when we're stressed is we're not breathing, and we're able to, particularly extend the exhale. That's telling our body, it's like if you always have a saber-toothed tiger, sitting behind you, you're not going to be able to sit down and have a really relaxing breath. So if you're able to do that, your body is telling you this is safe.
Yeah.
If I can have a really, really long exhale, that's safe. So breathing is a really, really great one. What the 5 by 5 to thrive really allows us to do is different parts of the day. We're just focusing on our breath, and we're taking this 30,000 foot view of our life and just say, hey, am I living, my day the way I want to right now? Or am I being like dragged in other people's energy fields? So I think that's really important. Other things we can do is, if we hack our body. So here's the thing. Every emotional state we have in our body has a physical state and a breathing state that matches, which is why when we start to relax our breathing, we could relax that down. Check this out. Our eyes, when we're really stressed out, is really focused on one thing. It's really focused out there. When an animal is stressed out, it's really focused on the predator about to come. But when an animal is grazing, they're just chewing on some grass. They're looking out there. They're gazing. And so when we can just take ourselves out of the computer screen and go out in nature, just take a gaze at what's out there. Just start to gaze. And that relaxation, that dilatation of the muscles of your eye actually will bring down the stress. That's really helpful as well. Journaling is a great way to deal with stress. Why is that helpful? Well, you could take all your thoughts and put it down on paper. And as you put those down on paper, you're like, oh my God, that autopilot, that's what the autopilot's doing. And it allows you to go, oh, that's autopilot. That's not me. and I could associate myself from that. So many other things we can talk about. I don't know how much time we have, but
we got time. I love the whole journaling aspect because I'm a strong believer that when you physically see it in front of you, it's a huge difference.
Right. Yeah.
Huge difference. And with stress too, I mean, your environment, a lot of your environment has to do with who you surround yourself with. Yeah. And this goes back to Ismail, what you said, it was having around positive people in your life. If you're around people that are constantly, and they don't have to be negative towards yourselves, but they're negative towards themselves, and they're always playing a victim card, those people are dragging you down too. You might not realize it, but that energy is just sucking the shit out of you. Yeah. And learning how to, I mean, I really, not only study my schedule, I really study who I surround myself with on a regular basis. And there's people in your life that I'm a strong believer that everybody has a purpose in your life. They might be there for a minute. They might be there for a month. They might be there for 10 years. When their purpose is done, it's okay to let them go. Yeah. It's okay to move on. And a lot of people get stuck where they feel like they have to keep this person in their life they've known for all these years. That person's constantly draining the shit out of you, draining your energy. And you only have a certain amount of energy every day to provide to people, to give to yourself. So really studying who's around you and knowing who's around you and surrounding yourself with the positive people. People are going to just put a smile on your face. I mean, I try to, I mean, some of my closest friends are they're jokers because you're around them, you're just laughing, and there's nothing that heals the soul than a good laugh, right? So just surrounding yourself around people that are just going to not only add value, but add a sense of calmness, a sense of joy to your life is so powerful.
Absolutely. We are, Jim Rohn says we are the average of the 5 people we hang out with most. And that is 100% the case for any area you want in life. You want to be healthy, make sure you hang out with 5 healthy people. You want to, be financially free, hang out with 5 people, who've done it, because you pick up the habits, the energy, the behaviors, the actions of those people. And again, I'm going to stress it again. We are the result of the choices that we make in life. So you learn those choices from hanging out with people that have the life that you want. And it's about making those choices conscious and doing it over and over again.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's something, even as a kid, I remember you always hear that saying from your parents. Like, I remember my mom always saying that, like, tell me the 5 people you're around and I'll tell you who you are. Right. It's just, it really, really does that. This has been amazing, buddy. Let's talk about you quickly. Like, how do our audience get a hold of you? How does our audience buy your book and all that stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I'm all over social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, at Kien Vuu MD. That's KIENVUUMD. The book is called Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance. You can pick up 3 free chapters. If you don't want to purchase the book, just read those 3 chapters. It will give you the tools to optimal health. You can go visit thrivestatebook.com for that. And those are the best places to reach me.
This has been awesome, brother. I appreciate it. I'm sure this connection is going to continue. I'm looking forward to being on your show and continuing our friendship. When's the last time? Have you been in Toronto, Canada before?
I have not been to Toronto. I've been to Vancouver. Is the only, I know.
Toronto, come on.
Lots of friends out there. So
beautiful city. And now that our lockdowns are open again and we're back to being normal, beautiful place for you to come visit. Anytime you're here, make sure you reach out to me and we could meet up and have a bite and hang out for a bit.
Oh yeah, I would love that. Thank you. I mean, you're an amazing human being. Getting a chance to know you a little bit more, and the father you are makes me, like when I think, oh, okay, how do I become the best father? And I need to think of 5 people, I need to hang out with. You're definitely one of those 5. So
appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate it. Yeah. Let's keep this conversation going. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, buddy.
You got it.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank Dr. V for taking time out of his busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Lopes podcast. If you guys enjoyed this episode, like always, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word, try and build something special here. Leave a review. 5 stars will be absolutely amazing. Myself, my team love spending time reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.